Do you have an ambition to do them all?
No, it doesn't interest me. There's some places I think have limited appeal to me. If someone said, okay, we'll pay you to go to every place, yeah, I'll probably do it. But honestly, I think I'm a slow traveller, and the amount of time I'd want to spend in each destination would mean I'd be travelling for the rest of my life. And as much as I love travel, you've got to stop at some stage.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world.
My name is Palle Bo, and I'm a long-time radio producer. In 2013, I started planning to become a digital nomad and a full-time traveler. 3 years later, I had sold my house, my car, and all my furniture. And in July 2016, I set out on a quest to visit every country in the world. In this podcast, I'm taking you along on my journey. And I'm sharing my ups and downs and let you listen in to conversations with some interesting people I meet along the way.
This is the Radiovagabond podcast.
This is episode 87 of the Radiovagabond podcast, and another interview with an interesting person in the travel media industry. So if you're interested in the nomadic lifestyle and thinking of becoming a travel blogger, YouTuber, or travel podcaster, you might want to stick around. This is Shane Dallas.
But most people know you as the Travel Camel.
That's right. I love camels and I love to travel.
Yeah, and you always wear the iconic hat, so that's how we know you?
Yeah, I love fedoras.
Yeah,
Fedoras are a very stylish hat, and I've worn this for 9 years, I think, fedoras now.
Yeah. Do you sleep with it at night? Because I've never ever seen it without you without it.
That's a secret.
So Shane, tell me where you're from and how did you become the Travel Camel?
Okay, I was born in Australia, and about 2001, I started using the name The Travel Camel, and it was actually on an email address. And because I love travelling and love exploring, and from Australia, everything takes a long time to go to, so I'd always travel for long periods. So I initially started communicating with people through email. That was the day before you could really upload much to the web. And then that developed, and then I started doing, blog posts, and now I mostly do social media. So it's what I try to do is I gravitate towards places along the road less travelled, such as Middle East, Africa, Central Asia.
Yeah. And where about in Australia?
I was born in Adelaide, but I spent 30 years in southeast Queensland. So that's Brisbane, which is the third largest city in Australia.
Yeah. And did you at some point become fully nomadic, or did you always have a home base?
I had a home base. I used to work for a government agency in Australia, and I did that for 12 years. And we Aussies have very nice leave conditions, so I was able to take 4 to 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks a year off to go travelling and come back. I was made redundant in 2012, and the decision was to look for another job in Australia or take the uncertain path and head overseas. And that's what I did. I took a one-way trip overseas. I was basically nomadic for about 1,500 days. Approximately, and it was a lot of, probably not that long, but it was for years. And then a couple of years ago, the longer I travelled, the slower I travelled, and decided it was just really difficult to build a business when you're on the road all the time, and so basically stopped in Kenya.
Yeah, what happened? What happened in Kenya?
Well, Kenya, my wonderful, wonderful ladies are in Kenya. Maureen, who I'd met in 2008, actually. So I'd met her back when I was in my first trip to Kenya in 2008. And so we're there. We now have a wonderful daughter. She's kind of the light of our lives. And so it's changed a bit for me. I still move around a bit, but I tend not to stay for as long. So once I finish, I tend to head back. But when they come with me, then we stay away a bit longer. So
how old is your daughter?
She's now 16 months.
Yeah. And actually, when we met in the Czech Republic just a month ago, you had your wife and daughter with you, and I had the pleasure of meeting them. And when I saw them, I just thought, oh my God, she's so cute.
Everyone says how cute she is, and she's so smart, and she knows.
And your daughter's nice too.
My
I've been so looking forward to that.
Yes, you mean I fell for that one, didn't I? Yeah, no, Maureen is an amazing person, and Avalon's really smart, and both are very smart, but Avalon knows when I am away. So if I'm down the shop buying groceries, or I'm just off, getting some food, or somewhere else on the property, she never calls me. But since I've been here, and same when I was in Nigeria last month, she will find my number on Mummy's phone and call me.
Oh, really?
She will know me and call me when I'm away.
Wow.
But when I'm in Kenya, she will never call me.
No.
That's amazing.
And when I saw them, because that was her first trip outside of Kenya.
Yes, it was.
And I met them at the opening party, and there were a ton of people there, and she was looking confused and with her big brown eyes looking around at people. And Maureen said it's because she's a little bit confused because so many people look like Daddy because she's never really seen that many white people before.
No, I'm the only white person she sees.
Yeah.
So everyone else she meets is various colours of African, tribal colours, basically black skin, dark skin, lighter black skin, but always dark skin. I'm the only light person she ever sees. And once we were somewhere and someone walked past who had a bit the same age of me and had a bit of the same look, and she looked and her mouth open and she just watched with her eyes this person who looked like Daddy. It's the first time she'd seen another white face, and so she rarely sees a white face, and to see so many white faces, we think that took her a bit of time to adjust to.
Yeah. She was very quiet at that time.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses around the world. Hotels25.com, best price guaranteed.
You really settled down in Kenya, and life there. I have yet to come to Kenya, and I'm so looking forward to it. But it must be so much different than life in Brisbane.
Oh, it certainly is. First of all, the weather. Brisbane is subtropical. Nairobi in Kenya is about 200 kilometres from the equator, but because we're at about the altitude of 1,200 metres, the temperature never changes. So it's between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius during the day for 95% of the year. It doesn't change, and it's constant, where we would have subtropical, we would have mid-30s, high humidity, tropical storms in Brisbane in summer, winter, dry, warm winters around 20. So that's one change. Infrastructure is different. Of course, in Brisbane, being in Australia, it's third largest city. You have everything. You have all the hospitals, all the schools, internet connectivity, everything. In Kenya, the big difference in Kenya is it's a lot more sociable. People still communicate and connect, and you've been to Africa. You know how people network on the streets. And that is you don't get that. People, if a stranger comes up to you in Australia, they'll go, huh? What are you doing? It's still that suspicion. But in Africa, it's normal. People just to come up and just chat. And so I'm used to just walking around and having total strangers just say hello, talk to me. It's just perfectly normal for me now.
And you feel like you're a part of the community now?
I do. I understand the country is very hard. It's interesting that when you're in places such as Kenya, people who visit Africa briefly or see it from the outside have a certain perception. And when they come in briefly, they have a perception. But when you stay longer, your perception and your opinion of what is going on there changes. So what is really not welcome in a lot of sub-Saharan African countries is foreigners who have little or no experience of their country, giving advice as to their internal matters. And it is seen as a modern form of colonialism. It is really disliked. And so I know I have definite opinions on the politics in the country, but I don't make them public. It's just discussed in the home, and that's how it's seen as quite offensive, really. In Australia, a foreigner can talk about Aussie politics and various other things about it, and the Australians don't care. But the Kenyans, it is actually a sensitive issue, and it's similar in other places in sub-Saharan Africa.
What's the politics like in Kenya?
It's very tribal. To understand politics in a lot of places of Africa, you have to understand the tribal nature. So the largest tribe is the Kikuyu tribe, which is the main tribe of the Jubilee Alliance, which is the governing party, and they have governed since independence in 1963. And then the opposition party was called CORD, and then they changed to NASA, and that's a lot of the Luo tribe, which I think is the second largest tribe, support that. And the tribes, everyone gets on really well in Kenya. And there's a lot of diversity, and there really is inclusive. As a white person or Indian, you will never feel any prejudice or anything against you. come election tribes, some of those tribes really do not get on well, and there is definite friction, and there are deaths, there are protests. A lot of people go back to the home village because it's just not safe when it's a mix, and all businesses go quiet, and after the election, within a few days, life gets back to normal. So, and that applies to any country in sub-Saharan Africa. If it's an election time, the month before, just avoid it, because those tribal tensions, you're not going to be the target as a traveller, but you could be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. But it's a democracy.
Absolutely a democracy, yeah. One of the most stable democracies in Africa, very stable government, very stable currency, one US dollar is about 100 shillings. So it's 100 bob, they call them shillings a bob, that's the nickname. So 100 shillings, that 100 to 1 ratio doesn't change by more than 2% in 3 years I've been there. It's a very stable currency.
And as a traveller, you can get by on English there?
English is the national language along with Swahili, which is the language that virtually unifies everyone apart from tribal languages. So Maureen has 2 languages, Kikuyu, who's her tribal language, and Swahili. And you'll find the Maasai will have Maasai and Swahili, and the Samburans will have Samburu and Swahili. Everyone seems to have Swahili, not everyone has English, but it's strongly geared to the European tourism market. And anyone you would want to deal with on a basis is going to know some English. The person serving you at the shop, the supermarket, the person at your safari lodge, the person transporting you, where you want to buy souvenirs, they're all going to know English. English is the international language now, so there's no problems with language barriers. And for most people, it's visa on arrival or visa through the e-visa, and it's currently $50 for a single entry up to 3 months.
Yeah. I can't wait. It sounds like a place I'm going to love. Let's talk a little bit about your travel up until you settled down in Kenya. How many places have you been to? I get the feeling that you've been all over the place.
Yeah, I've been to 102 countries now.
Oh.
And I'm not one
hit
that...
the 100 mark.
I hit the 100th mark on my birthday in 2016, and that was Iran.
That is a long time ago.
That was Iran, and it doesn't seem like that long ago, but I do still travel a lot, but it's mostly to countries I've been to before.
Yeah.
So it's quite unusual. So 2015, the only new country I visited, 2016, sorry, the only new country I visited was Iran. 2017, the only one was Nepal. This year, Nigeria. And I've still gone to other places, but I've seen them before. So the country count and territory count is growing more slowly now than for a few years where I really was on the road all the time.
Do you have an ambition to do them all?
No, it doesn't interest me. There's some places I think have limited appeal to me. If someone said, okay, we'll pay you to go to every place, yeah, I'll probably do it. But honestly, I think I'm a slow traveller, and the amount of time I'd want to spend in each destination would mean I'd be travelling for the rest of my life. And as much as I love travel, you've got to stop at some stage. It is a tiring process because it's full of challenges, and they're positive challenges, but that to be on your guard all the time, you have to let it down, and when you're at home, you can let your guard down.
Most people I've talked to who's been to Iran have had the same experience that I had when I was there, that people are super friendly. Do you agree on that? 100%.
I think the friendliest places I've been to, it's interesting, they're all in a band. In a certain section of the Middle East, the Syrians are one of the friendliest people. I'd say I put them in the top 3. The next one's the Iranians, but the friendliest are the Kurds. The Kurdish, when I was in Kurdistan in Iraq, the Kurds, the hospitality is even more. It's phenomenal. But I mean, it's so close between them. But the Kurds, I remember particularly for their hospitality.
Yeah, I can see that. I was in Suleimania. Was that where?
Yeah, Suleimania is the cultural centre of the Kurdistan, and you go into the cafes. I remember going to a cafe, and I met an author, and someone was showing me around. I said, "Oh, this is," and he named the author, and he does poems in Kurdish, and he's known as the Prince of Autumn because he writes about quite somber topics, autumn being a time of death. with the leaves dying. So he writes about these very somber topics. And people, as I was talking to him, and his English was quite good, and we were just chatting, so many people were coming up asking for his autograph, and it was really interesting. But that's how open the Kurds are. And I remember being in Sulaymaniyah, and I think I was there for 4 nights. I only paid for one meal. Everyone kept giving me meals.
How long time ago was that?
That was 2013, before the
exactly.
conflict.
I was there in 2015 and working with a government-funded organization called International Media Support, and I was there to help a newspaper organization set up a radio station. They help media where freedom of speech has a hard time. So, and I was supposed to go back 3 more times, but then the whole ISIS situation came, and I didn't feel like going there looking like Western journalists.
It's a lot safer now, and one of my gauges for how safe it is that quite a few of the Middle East airlines, say out of Dubai, for example, are now flying again into Erbil and Sulaymaniyah. Yeah. And generally, when the airlines are not flying to a destination, not only is it not safe to land and take off at the airport, but there's a lot of instability in the area. But now the flying, and the other reason is that flights determine. So back before the Syrian conflict, going from Middle East to Europe, we used to go through Syria mostly. And then when the Syrian war came on, we used to go through Iraq. And then ISIL came up, and then we went through Iran. And now planes go over through Iraq, Kurdistan, so that the airspace there is a lot more stable.
This is the Radiovagabond podcast.
And I can take anything you can throw at me, and nothing can get me down. Life is looking so bright, the sun is up again. I'm feeling like I could fly. No clouds in my way, no. And I'm living the good life. And I'm living the good life now. I'm living the good life, and nothing can get me down, no.
We're here at a travel bloggers conference, and at the conference in the Czech Republic, the TBEX Europe, you were the conference director. So that meant that you found the speakers and me,
including you,
including me, and this time at TBEX here in North America, you don't have to do anything, so you can really enjoy it. You were so super busy all the time, running around from session to session.
It's interesting. I said to Maureen, and not that she really believed that when I go on holiday, it's actually, go to these places as a holiday, but she kind of really understood how busy I am when I go to these conferences.
You should have brought them here instead.
Then I get the impression that I really do relax. But so that was really, TBEX I was a speaker first in 2013, and then I approached Rick Calvert, CEO of TBEX, when the position of conference director was open, and I speak at a lot of events, especially travel trade, and I said, I've got some changes I'd like to suggest. I think there are things that we can do here, because TBEX is the oldest and the premier of these events, but you can always improve, and I had some suggestions. So basically how I approach TBEX Europe is I want people to present advanced, practical and specific information with lots of examples and case studies, and most of it tends to focus on advanced online content and advanced online marketing. And there's some exceptions, but if you fall in those categories, you've got a better chance of speaking than if you just give me a topic full of generalizations or something you can find by using Google. That's not going to get you far at TBEX Europe.
You are listening to the Radiovagabond podcast. If you like what you hear, please leave a review in iTunes. If you're listening on an iPhone, you can actually do it right there within your podcast app. And now, back to the show.
Having seen so many sessions and having been in the game for that long, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you to give your top 3 tips for travel bloggers or people who wants to get into the travel bloggers industry.
I would say that it's more than just blogging now. Not as many people use that term. So people say I'm a podcaster, or a photographer, a videographer, a travel writer.
Yeah, I noticed that this is TBEX, the travel media.
Yeah, it's the future of travel media, and that's more accurate now. But I would say for anyone getting in this industry, first of all, don't get into it to to see how many free trips you get, you're not going to survive for long. You can get free trips. I can get plenty of free trips, but they're not going to pay my internet bill at home or food for the family. So that's just not a sustainable approach. Number 2, strive to build long-term partnerships with people. This is why you'll never see anyone at TBEX, even here in the US or in Europe, saying, this is my strategy for getting free hotel nights for exchange for hotel reviews. No one is ever going to speak on that, because this is not a sustainable model. You need long-term relationships which you build up over years. Number 3, diversify your income as much as possible. I do social media training, I do travel photography. I'm TBEX director, so I've had to cut back some of the other activities because of it. But I know people who have online shops, people who run tours. I've run a tour myself, and that diversification of income is critical. Because the days of just relying on, I can give you publicity, is under threat, is under serious threat. I can give you awareness, I can give you a publicity. Now people are looking for more. Build that relationship, offer them different products and services, and spread that. And affiliate marketing is a very big one now, affiliate linking through websites. These are the methods which will give you more certainty in the future than just trying to chase a one-off media trip or one-off campaign. Long relationships. So 3 lessons. 1, you need to diversify your income. 2, you need long relationships. And B, don't do it for free trips. This is a business. You've got to treat it as a business.
Yeah. We should get paid for our work.
Yeah, it is work. And one thing that Mike Huxley said, I don't know if he said it to you, but we were talking in the lead up to Ostrava, and he was one of the speakers, so I kind of speak to all the speakers and chat them, and he was talking about that influence is a byproduct. And that's very true. It's a byproduct of what we do. We have other services and products we can offer, and the influence is a byproduct, because in a lot of cases, the measuring of influence, the measuring of the ROI and influence is so difficult in the travel industry. Why? Because the lead-in time from when you see something to when you actually travel to the area is usually a long time. It's not like a restaurant where you can say, well, I'll go there this weekend. You can do that. I'll go there tonight. You hear an ad. If you hear an ad for a destination or see something on social media or blog about a destination, you have to save up money, you have to book hotels, flights, you have to apply for leave for your job. It's just not going to happen in the next month or 2 months. That's why measuring ROI is so tricky in this industry. And there is a benefit in it, but measuring it is difficult. And you can measure it over a longer period of time, but longer than some people are willing to wait for. And that is why if you offer additional services, that ROI becomes more measurable because it's more immediate.
The next TBEX that you're going to be a conference director on?
It's in Europe. I also do TBEX Africa, but I can't reveal either of them.
Damn it!
I've got so many people.
I was trying to trick Rick into telling me yesterday, and he wouldn't. He said that the North America one will be announced here. So I already said that in the podcast when I had Rick on. But the next one in Europe, you can't reveal.
I can't reveal, but it is. I tell you where it's not.
How close is it to becoming final?
Oh, it's very close. I don't deal with any of that. So what happens is Rick finalises that, and then I'm told, this is it, you're ready, and then I start speaking to them about what topics they want for their part of the world. So we're not in Czech Republic. They are the land of stories, so they wanted a storytelling session. So I had a track on storytelling. We had one person do video, one person do photographic, and you did podcast storytelling. So therefore, I try to tailor it to each section so the DMOs and the providers, the tour operators, can get the most out of hosting a TBEX event.
And you said you can tell me where it's not going to be?
Well, it's not in Spain where we've been twice. It's not in Ireland where we've been twice. It is not in Sweden or Denmark where we've also been, and not in Greece or Czech Republic where we've been.
Oh, my guess was Greece.
We've been there. We were there in 2014. No, we're not going back there.
Rick said that it's a country where everything is a little bit slow.
I don't know if you're baiting me, so I'm not even going to answer that. You may just be fishing again.
But when is it going to be? Do you know that?
I believe it's June. As I
Okay.
said, until it is actually finalised.
And Zimbabwe is going to be in 19, but
Yes.
I haven't seen any dates on that.
Zimbabwe will be in 2019 in the last quarter.
Okay.
So that's again, I'm only going on current information.
Yeah.
I don't negotiate. I get updated, but I'm not in current information. But it's important. Zimbabwe, I think, is really important because the country's had a pretty rough economic time, and it was the private operators there that approached us and said, we really want it here. We really, really want it here now. Yeah. And so therefore, it's a great chance for people to see Zimbabwe and understand that Africa, and you've been through Africa a lot, that it's very different from the impression. It's not just all people, rural people living in tents. It just doesn't happen.
And actually, Zimbabwe was on the table, was it last year, and didn't fall through because stuff happened all of a sudden down there?
I think actually stuff happened before stuff happened. We noticed that communication was getting just a bit less. Things always take time there, but we found things were taking extremely long time. And then that's when we were approached by this private consortium, and they said, we really, really want it. Yeah. And that's how it happened. But the details apart from that, that's as much as I know.
I have to touch on this because there was some critical voices out there about, you shouldn't go to a country like that, and indirectly you're promoting dictatorship. And any thoughts on that?
The people who are most critical were the people who had never been there. Yeah. And that is pretty typical. You know what I said before about how sub-Saharan Africans really dislike when foreigners who hardly know their country, particularly white ones, comment about their internal issues. This is a perfect example. They basically see such views as white colonialism. That's what they do. It's really interesting because I know at the time when that came up, we have friends. I spent a month in Zimbabwe, and I know people who did not openly support the government, who, when we said we want to bring a TBEX to Africa, and it was going to be through the government body, they said, fantastic. They didn't care. They just wanted TBEX there. And that proof, regardless of government support, whether you wanted it, has been borne true because now we've had a private consortium say, we really, really want it. We don't care if the government's involved. We just want it. We want it because we think it can make a real difference here. And so that's what it is. And again, what I'd like people to understand through TBEX in Africa is when we're looking at Africa and other places, it's not about, they need to be saved and we have to be a positive voice of change. It's just listening to their stories. It's understanding them. They don't want to be saved. They don't need to be rescued. It's not an NGO wasteland, Africa. It's a place which has dynamic entrepreneurial people who need their voices heard and not having us to tell them how to think. And that is, as I said, I've got a vested interest in this. I've got a mixed-race baby and a wife who's Kenyan, and I've spent a lot of time on the continent, probably 4 years now, 3 years based there, and another year travelling around to, I think, 12 or 13 countries now. And that is a universal theme that we, look at what we do. We are entrepreneurial. We have high rises. We're not just poverty-ridden. Yes, of course there's problems, but there's problems in Australia. I can show you poor areas in Australia as well. But the thing is, the media focuses in Australia, in a Western nation, on kangaroos, white beaches, koalas, Uluru. But in Africa, they focus on animals and poverty. And people never see the aspect of a modern, dynamic people who are quite entrepreneurial, and it's never seen. And I hope that Zimbabwe shows that side and people can see the side of Africa that I see, which is a fantastic, dynamic people and population, and take that message to the world.
And I heard someone from Europe say that I'm going to TBEX in the USA, and that doesn't mean that I support Trump.
Oh, that's exactly right. And the thing is, and I'm going to put it really simply out there, basically almost entire criticism of TBEX Zimbabwe came from white people, and that that's it. That's the reality. It was almost exclusively white, where there were people of different colours who came out and said, well, why can't they have it? Why can't they have it? Why can't they? Why do we have to put these values on that? They give them a chance. Let's not shove our values down other people's throats, because it is just unwelcome. And I just spoke in Nigeria last month. I do social media training. I did one on Nigeria, and I talked about how social media allows people in these countries to actually direct some of the narrative of how they're perceived, instead of being perceived by foreigners with little or no knowledge of their country. And people cheered and applauded. And I tell you, if I gave that same message in sub-Saharan Africa, I would get the same reaction.
It's always a pleasure. We could talk for hours, and I don't know where I'll see you again, but I can't wait.
I look forward to it too.
Next Monday, I'm back in High Point, where we're taking a closer look on how this small city of High Point became the furniture capital of the world. My name is Palabo. See ya.